The crystal chandeliers of Lumiere cast diamonds of light across white tablecloths, where Silicon Valley's elite discussed mergers over $30 appetizers. But none of that mattered to Marcus Chen anymore. His 7-year-old son was melting down, and every eye in the restaurant had turned to judge them. Thomas rocked violently in his chair, hands clamped over his ears, tears streaming down his flushed cheeks as he wailed, a sound that pierced through the classical music and polite conversation like a siren. Marcus felt his own chest tighten, that familiar sensation of the walls closing in, of being utterly helpless despite all his money and power. He was a billionaire who could move markets with a phone call, yet he couldn't comfort his own child. "Sir, perhaps you should take him outside," the maitre d' suggested, his voice dripping with the kind of politeness that barely masked disdain. Around them, diners whispered behind raised menus. One woman actually took out her phone, probably to post about the bad parenting she was witnessing on social media. Marcus wanted to scream at them all. His son wasn't having a tantrum, Thomas was autistic, and something in this environment had overwhelmed his senses. Maybe it was the clinking silverware, the competing conversations, the strong perfume from the table beside them, or all of it combined into an unbearable symphony of stimulation. But how could he explain that to people who saw only a disruption to their expensive evening? "Thomas, buddy, it's okay," Marcus whispered, reaching for his son's hand. Thomas jerked away, his wails growing louder. Marcus's business partner, Jennifer, sat frozen across the table, clearly uncomfortable. This dinner was supposed to seal a $100 million deal, but that seemed laughably unimportant now. Marcus had lost his wife, Claire, to cancer 2 years ago. She had been Thomas's anchor, the one who could always calm him, who understood every sound and gesture. Since her death, Marcus had thrown himself into work, trying to build an empire that would secure Thomas's future, a future he worried about constantly. Who would understand his beautiful, brilliant boy when Marcus was gone? Who would see past the meltdowns to the child who could recite entire books from memory, who noticed patterns no one else could see? Just as Marcus prepared to abandon the dinner and scoop Thomas up, deal be damned, a figure appeared beside their table. It wasn't the manager or another server. It was the janitor, an older man Marcus had barely noticed earlier, emptying trash bins near the kitchen entrance. He wore a simple gray uniform, and his weathered hands suggested decades of hard work. Without saying a word, the janitor knelt down beside Thomas's chair, bringing himself to eye level with the boy. Then he did something Marcus would never forget. The man began to hum, not a recognizable tune, but a low, rhythmic sound that somehow cut through the chaos. He pulled a worn rubber ball from his pocket, the kind with a textured surface, and began rolling it between his palms. Thomas's screams faltered, caught mid-breath. His red-rimmed eyes darted to the man, then to the ball. The janitor continued humming, his movements slow and predictable. Roll, pause, roll, pause. The rhythm was hypnotic. Gradually, miraculously, Thomas's breathing began to slow. The janitor never tried to touch him, never spoke, just continued his gentle humming and the rhythmic movement of the ball. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 2 minutes, Thomas reached out a trembling hand. The janitor carefully placed the ball in the boy's palm. Thomas squeezed it, feeling the texture, and a shuddering breath escaped him. The tears still flowed, but silently now. The janitor remained kneeling, a steady presence, occasionally humming that wordless tune. Around them, the restaurant had gone quiet, no longer with judgment, but with something resembling awe. "You have a son," Marcus said softly, more statement than question. The janitor looked up, his brown eyes kind and understanding. "I had a son," he replied, his voice gravelly but gentle. "Lost him 5 years ago. He was 23. Autistic, like your boy here." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "I'm so sorry." The man shook his head, a sad smile crossing his weathered face. "He taught me more about love than anyone else ever could. Taught me that the world is too loud, too bright, too much for some beautiful souls. And that the greatest gift we can give is just being present. Being calm in their storm. How did you know what to do? Marcus asked, watching as Thomas continued to squeeze the ball, his breathing almost normal now. The humming, it was white noise, something to focus on instead of all the other sounds. The ball gave him something physical to ground himself. The janitor reached into his other pocket and pulled out another ball, identical to the first. Keep this one. The texture helps when things get overwhelming. Thomas looked directly at the janitor, rare eye contact that made Marcus's heart leap, and whispered, "Thank you." The janitor's eyes grew wet. "You're very welcome, young man." As the janitor stood to leave, Marcus grabbed his arm. "Wait. Please. What's your name?" "Robert. Robert Mills." "Robert, Marcus struggled to find words adequate to the moment. "I don't know how to thank you. You saved us tonight. Would you let me do something for you?" "Anything?" Robert smiled and shook his head. "Not necessary, sir." "Please," Marcus insisted. "You've given me something priceless." The older man studied him for a long moment. "Well, if you really want to do something. I run a support group. Parents of kids with autism. We meet in a church basement on Thursday nights. Could always use more support, maybe a donation to help some of the families who are struggling." Marcus pulled out his phone. "Consider it done." "What's the name of the group?" As Robert shared the details, Marcus transferred $50,000 on the spot, not because he thought money could repay this kindness, but because it was all he could think to do. Robert's eyes widened when he saw the notification on his ancient flip phone, but Marcus held up a hand. "It's nothing compared to what you've given me tonight. You've shown me that Thomas isn't alone in this world. That there are people who understand, who care, who see him." His voice cracked. "I've been so afraid of his future. So afraid that when I'm gone, there won't be anyone who loves him, who gets him." Robert placed a weathered hand on Marcus's shoulder. "There will always be people who see the beauty in souls like your son's. You just have to look beyond the expensive suits and fancy titles. Sometimes the people who understand best are the ones who've walked through fire themselves." Later that night, after Marcus had tucked Thomas into bed, the textured ball clutched in his sleeping hand, he stood at the window of their penthouse apartment, looking down at the glittering city below. He thought about Robert, probably back to mopping floors, carrying that devastating loss of his son while still finding it in his heart to help a stranger's child. The next day, Marcus canceled 3 meetings. He called the support group Robert had mentioned and signed up to attend the next session. Then he reached out to his company's foundation and established a new program, funding sensory-friendly spaces in restaurants, training staff about autism awareness, and providing grants to families navigating the expensive reality of raising children with special needs. But more importantly, he sat down with Thomas and really played with him, not checking his phone, not thinking about his next meeting, just being present in that moment. Being calm in his son's storm, just as a janitor in a gray uniform had shown him. 3 months later, Lumiere Restaurant became the first in the city to complete sensory-friendly certification, with quiet hours, adjusted lighting, and trained staff. On opening day of their new program, Marcus brought Thomas back. This time, his son smiled as they walked through the door. And cleaning the tables in a crisp new uniform, because Marcus had made sure Robert was promoted to dining room supervisor, was the man who had changed everything with nothing more than a rubber ball and a kind heart.